Hello and welcome to another episode of the NBA Outlet presented by OTGBasketball.com. Make sure you follow OTG on Twitter at OTGBasketball. Also, you can always listen to NBA Outlet on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, and OTGBasketball.com. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, my guy, Kory Waldron. What's cooking, Kory?
And nothing much. It's a beautiful Sunday. It's a beautiful day to be alive. As you just mentioned, we're all over the place. You can find us anywhere at this point in time.
Yeah, and we got a ton of podcasts, too. It's not just the NBA Outlet. Kory's got Full Access Hoops. I got Brooklyn Buzz. Our guy, Jack Manuel's got JBT. Our guy, Jay Christen's got Shuttlesworth Initiative. And Jesse Corbin's got Celtics Express. We got more pods coming. And you can check us out, like I said, at OTGBasketball.com or blogtalkradio.com. We have our own OTG Basketball Network page. But time to talk some NBA hoops. Today, we're going to talk NBA power rankings. So obviously we're presented by OTGBasketball.com. We just uploaded our new power rankings, so you can go over there, check them out. But Kory and I are going to go through them, if we agree, disagree, what we think about that team. So to start it off, number one in our rankings, the Houston Rockets. They're up 2 spots from the preseason ranking. Obviously, James Harden has been a beast. This team has been an offensive juggernaut. What are your thoughts on the Rockets? Do you like them at number one?
I think they are number one at this point in time. They were fantastic when Chris Paul was down, and they got Chris Paul back, and they didn't skip a beat. They got even better. I think they have the best offense and defense currently still. Chris Paul has been fantastic for them. They have a playmaker on the court at all times. If James Harden's not on the court, Chris Paul is. If Chris Paul's not on the court, James Harden is. It doesn't even account for the fact when they're both on the court. My co-host on Full Access Hoops showed me a stat. Ryan Anderson, off Chris Paul passes, is shooting 77%.
That's wild.
Clicking.
Yeah. I mean, having a player like Chris Paul and James Harden, it's almost a guaranteed 20 assists a night. That's 20 easy shots for your squad. Obviously, the Rockets shoot a crazy amount of threes. Over 42% of their points come from three-pointers. I think they shoot over 44 threes a game. So I agree. I think, number one, the way they're playing, they're having a lot of fun, playing on both ends of the floor. And it just seems like all the pieces fit really well. Number two, Boston Celtics, up 2 spots in the preseason rankings, and that's with the Gordon Hayward injury. Obviously, a big reason for that, coaching, Kyrie Irving, Al Horford, and the depth of this team. What are your thoughts on the Celtics at number two?
I mean, they had to be number two because they had to be the best team in the East. I don't know if they are the best team in the East as of right now. I mean, the Cavs are playing really good basketball, as we know. But, they had a 15-game winning streak. And when you're on that kind of winning streak, clearly you're, at least for this time, the best team in the East. And they've gotten incredible starts from guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I mean, who expected those guys in their rookie and sophomore year to have such a big impact?
Specifically, Jason Tatum. We thought Jaylen Brown might make a jump, but Tatum coming in his rookie year and being as successful as he is, I saw some of his fourth quarter numbers yesterday, and they're quite ridiculous. So I think the Celtics have what would be 12 clutch wins. So they're finishing in close games, getting those W's, grinding them out. They play some good defense. So I think number two is fair right now. I wouldn't be surprised if by the next time we do these rankings, they drop a few spots. Number three, Golden State. Down 2 spots from number one. Obviously, they're just kind of chilling right now, not taking it too seriously. What are your thoughts of the Warriors at 3?
The only reason they're 3 is because they have a couple bad losses when they were without Curry and Durant. The loss to the Kings is probably a big reason for the drop. The overtime win over the Lakers. Having these guys be in and out of the roster, out of the lineup. I mean, Draymond Green even missed the game.
Yeah, I mean, missing time is hurting them. And then just like we mentioned a few times on the podcast, they just don't seem that interested right now. But even though the Warriors do not have the best record in the league right now, they have the best net rating. So that's something, obviously, they still have the potential, and they'll probably be, by the end of the year, number one in the rankings and the favorite to win it all. Number 4, Cleveland Cavaliers, down 2 spots in the preseason rankings, but they are currently on an 11-game winning streak. And like you said, they might be the best team in the East right now.
Yeah, the Cavaliers are playing really good basketball right now. They're on that 11-game winning streak. They've seemed to really figure out their rotations. Unfortunately, they had to lose Tristan Thompson and Derrick Rose to figure out these rotations. But Dwayne Wade has been fantastic as a 6th man. I'm even seeing people now say he's in the running at least for 6th man of the year, which, a month ago we would have thought was laughable. LeBron has been absolutely clutch. It seems that in crunch time, there's not a single person you'd rather have on your team right now than LeBron, which you can't really say for the duration of his career. He had 13 points straight last night. Kevin Love has been really good. And this is all still without Isaiah Thomas, who was fifth in MVP voting last year. So I think the Cavaliers in general are just hitting their stride, and I'd be a little bit scared if I'm in the East.
Yeah, they are really starting to click, and I think you brought up a great point about Dwayne Wade. We mentioned him a few times on the pod. We talked Cavs last week. His fit with that second unit is really starting to get things to work really well. Him and Kyle Korver, like we mentioned, have a great relationship. And the fact that they're going to get Isaiah Thomas back possibly by the end of this month, I think the Cavs might jump up in maybe a spot or two because offensively they're going to be a really tough defend, and LeBron should be able to get a little bit more rest with Isaiah Thomas's back.
Yeah, I agree. And, to your point with Kyle Korver, I think I'm not sure, I haven't checked this stat, but he was number 1 in 3-point percentage a couple weeks ago. And that guy's 36, still doing what he's been doing his entire career, which has been really big for Cleveland.
And like I always mentioned about Korver, it's not just wide open threes. This guy hits like contested threes with a hand in his face, and he still shoots a high percentage. It's kind of ridiculous. But the next team, go ahead, Corey.
I just say he's the new J.R. Smith for them. J.R. Smith used to be that guy, and now it's Kyle Korver.
Yeah, it's crazy. LeBron does something to them. But number 5, Detroit Pistons, which is probably the biggest surprise, up 16 spots from our preseason rankings. But they're starting to kind of drop right now. 5-5 in their last 10. Our writer submitted these rankings earlier this week, so we can cut them some slack. But I think probably number 5 is a little bit high for the Pistons.
It's a little bit high, but, I mean, they're still playing good basketball. There's not that many teams in the Eastern Conference that you can honestly say are better than the Pistons. Toronto's been playing really good basketball too, but I still like Detroit, especially because I think they're still trying to work in Avery Bradley. Offensively, his numbers are a little bit below what they used for their career, but he's been great defensively. Tobias Harris, another Orlando Magic blunder. Drummond played really well last night, I thought, against Joel Embiid. And I love the trash talking that goes back and forth in this league currently. It's a lot of fun to watch. But I think Detroit may not be this high, but they're not that far down.
Yeah, I probably, even for just right now, I'd probably swap them maybe with Toronto. When I look at Detroit, I know a lot of guys are playing really well, but I think some of them are a little bit inconsistent along their career, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of a drop-off. But like you said, Andre Drummond, Tobias Harris, you're seeing guys step up, and that's what they need. Luke Kennard's been pretty good for them off the bench. So, I mean, the Pistons in the Eastern Conference definitely should be able to hold their own, and they have a good shot at landing probably a top 4 seed this playoffs.
It pains me to hear.
And they were good for so long. They weren't really out of the playoffs for that long. At number 6, we got the San Antonio Spurs, only down 2 spots. And when we did the preseason rankings, there was no thought that Kawhi would miss this much time. And with Kawhi out, they've still been running pretty well, and he should return soon.
Yeah, I mean, the Kawhi injury has kind of been like a mystery. The Spurs have been holding almost all information on that injury extremely close.
Top secret.
I barely seen any reports. I finally just, Tony Parker said he'll be back soon, and that was like the first time anyone from the Spurs had said anything about Kawhi Leonard, and it came from a player. But he's expected back, I think, within as soon as the end of this week. But, who knows? I know that he's finally in practice and training with the team, which is good to see. Skipped a beat.
Yeah.
Like you said, LaMarcus Aldridge, Pop had made a comment before the season started saying he's been using LaMarcus Aldridge wrong this whole time. And it looks like he figured out how to use him because that guy's been an absolute monster.
Yeah. And what do you think will happen to Aldridge when Kawhi comes back? How much worse do you think he's going to be? Or is he going to be able to kind of maintain a little bit of this level? Because Pop's going to stagger his minutes and Kawhi probably be on a minute restriction, so it won't be a big deal?
Well, I think it doesn't really matter when Kawhi comes back because I think the biggest change is now Aldridge is no longer forward. Spurs. They let Aldridge play the 5 because last year they gave a lot of rotations in which they had Powell and Aldridge on the floor at the same time. And in the new age of basketball, you just can't run that kind of lineup. So I think Aldridge at the center and then getting Kawhi, even if he's on a minute restriction, Aldridge will have to carry the load still for another month or so. But eventually he'll just slide back into being the number 2 option behind Kawhi. And that's not a bad thing. He can still average 25 as the number 2.
Yeah. It feels so strange, like having a player like Kawhi, who I think we would agree is a top 5 player in this league, being out for so long and his team able to kind of maintain. It says a lot about the Spurs and that whole team. So they're only down 2 spots without what some would say is the third best player in the league. But moving on to number 7, the Toronto Raptors, up 2 spots from the preseason rankings, and their young bench has really performed well.
Yeah, they've been a surprise. They struggled a little bit to start the year, and I kind of was hopping on that. Really good defense. Kyle Lowry hasn't had to do a lot. Looked better than he has in most recent years. Now that he's starting to hit his jump shots, and like you said, the bench, between Norman Powell, exceeding his role, Ibaka being missed time, Valanciunas missing sometimes. They've had their bigs off the bench really step up. CJ Miles has been a nice addition to the bench unit from deep. And Fred VanVleet, losing. I know Delon Wright's down with an injury right now, but Fred VanVleet has stepped up. Delon Wright was pretty good for them after losing Corey Joseph. Like you mentioned, the bench unit has been a really big surprise for Toronto.
Yeah, OG playing well after, not even being 100%.
That's right.
Yeah.
Forgot about
Pascal Siakam, he's playing really well. And then that other guy that I cannot pronounce his name, it just throws me off. Jake, I don't know how to say it, but he's been playing well. So, the Raptors, it's good for them. Their young pieces on their bench are playing well, which helps as trade assets. And they've been a team who's been mentioned in maybe a Marcus Gasol or DeAndre Jordan type trade. So who knows what the Raptors are trying to do, if they can kind of keep this up, or if they want to stick with the young talent, because obviously Lowry and Ibaka are starting to get up there in age.
Yeah, Ibaka's been the only really weak link for that Toronto team. Ibaka's been the one guy who's been struggling.
Yeah, so they do have some time to hopefully get him back in. And some people I saw even mention about putting Ibaka on the bench. But moving on to number 8, Portland Trailblazers, up 5 spots from our preseason rankings. What do you think about the Blazers at 8? I'm not sure if I'm sold at this.
If you're going by the numbers, they have a top 3 defensive rating team. And that's got to be why the writers at OTG put them at where they are this high. This is pretty high, I think, for Portland as well. But, their defense has been big time. They have a lot of decent big wins. I don't think anyone really thought Portland would be this high in the standings to start off the season. And that's with Lillard playing very good basketball. And McCollum, I picked him again in FanDuel last night, and he didn't do anything crazy. He just hasn't been as dominant of a scorer as he has been in recent history. But they still get the job done because it's just such a collective defensive effort, which is something you don't normally expect from Portland.
Yeah, I think they've stepped up more defensively, like you said, but I don't know if it's fool's gold, because I don't know if they'll play good defense all year long, because last year I think they were one of the worst defensive teams, so that'd be a really big jump. And like you said, they've been really dependent on Dame, so I think that always makes it tough. I think they're probably benefiting from the West struggling. The West isn't in the shape that we probably thought it would be going into the season. Teams like OKC struggling, Memphis banged up, the Clippers lost half their starting lineup, so I think they're probably benefiting from that. For now, I guess they could sit in the top 10, but hopefully by next time, if other teams don't step up, they'll stay here. But if they do, I wouldn't be surprised if Portland drops.
No, I still don't see them being a top 6 seed in the West. I definitely think they're going to drop a little bit.
Yeah. So, but who knows? They could be one of the teams that benefit from all this injuries, all these chemistry issues. But Western Conference team, Minnesota Timberwolves, only down 1 spot from our preseason rankings. And, that's not too bad because they have a lot of new pieces that need to gel.
Yeah, they've Wiggins has been kind of up and down scoring-wise. Jimmy Butler, I think, it took him a little bit to get started within the offense, but now he looks like he's finally getting intertwined. As we know, Cat offensively is a beast. For them, it's really just defense, which is funny because Thibodeau is their coach. Offensively, they've been fine. The defense just needs a little things tuned up.
Yeah, a lot of people have been slaughtering Towns on his defensive performances, and I think just overall their defense needs to step up, but they do have defensive pieces. So if they get things, together, they should be fine by the time the season ends. I think this will probably be around the spot they hang all season long. Next squad, another young squad, Philadelphia 76ers, up 9 spots in the preseason rankings, and that's pretty much because of their star players, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid.
Yeah, Man, they look fun to watch. The process. I'm absolutely tired of hearing trust the process, but the process really worked. Covington has been fantastic for them. Simmons has looked like the future LeBron James of this league, possibly. If Embiid stays healthy, Lord have mercy on the rest of the centers in the league. And they still haven't even had Markelle Fultz on the court. JJ Redick's been solid. They just made a lot of really good moves this offseason to bolster that roster. And the young talent is simply progressing at such a, it's what you hope from young talent. And the Sixers don't really seem to have a dud besides Okafor.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the Covington, the McConnell, the Redick, they're just perfect role players to put around, an Embiid and a Simmons. And like you said, these are two young stars and studs. And like, if I'm a Sixers fan, if Embiid can stay healthy and Simmons can develop a jump shot, there's a good chance we're going to be at the top of the East for years to come. So I like this. As long as they stay healthy, they're in good shape to be an Eastern Conference playoff team. Number 11, the Denver Nuggets. They're down one spot from the preseason ranking. They're probably going to drop a little bit more because they just lost Paul Millsap for a couple months, and then Nikola Jokic is going to be out for a couple weeks at least. So what are your thoughts on the Nuggets at 11?
I don't like them at 11. I think this is probably the first one. I think they're way too high. I think they're probably like 15 in the power rankings personally. They're not bad, but there's one of those teams that has been very, very up and down. One week you see the Nuggets and you think this is a really good basketball team. At 20 and you're just like what happened? Hot and cold.
Yeah, that is true. They're very inconsistent. And when Paul Millsap went down, it seemed like they were about to hit their stride. So losing him, I think, hurts them and puts them down a few spots. So number 12, another team that's dealing with injury. They're down 5 spots in their preseason ranking. That's Washington Wizards. John Wall, obviously being out, being one of the best point guards in the NBA, is going to do that to you.
You said it right there. This ranking is just completely influenced by the fact that John Wall is missing time. They've struggled a little bit with his absence, but the one bright spot about him being down is they really showcased Otto Porter Jr.
Yeah.
He's been stellar almost all season, probably better than Bradley Beal to this point. And then Gortat, I hope they trade because that's the one link. He's getting up there in age, a little bit too slow, I think, for this age of basketball.
Yeah, they've been a team in the DeAndre Jordan trade rumor, so who knows about that. But Otto Porter has looked good. I wish he was on the Brooklyn Nets. But Tim Frazier, who you and I both liked, going into this Wizards team, has really struggled for them, and that backup point guard position has really hurt the Wizards, John Wall being out. So when he comes back, I expect him to catch some rhythm. The only worrisome thing is, John Wall's knees, he's had injuries in the past, and this could be something that kind of stays with him all year long.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern anytime you get a knee injury early in the year because, like you said, they tend to linger because it's kind of hard to recover fully from any type of injury in a 82-game season. But we won't even know because John Wall plays through injuries a lot, and we know this about his career. And I'm not really worried. I think he'll be okay. Tim Frazier offensively is something I'm more concerned about. He just doesn't look as confident shooting the ball as he did last year with New Orleans. And that's what they really need because if you don't have a playmaker who can get guys involved, Bradley Beal isn't really a playmaking type of guard.
Yeah, and they've been asking him to do that definitely more with Wall out. On to our next team, and this is the New Orleans Pelicans at 13, 3 spots up from our preseason rankings. Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins playing great. AD just had a groin injury. We don't really know how serious that is, but I'll be honest, the Pelicans have surprised me a little bit. I didn't think they'd be this high. I think the fact that just Cousins has been dominant has really helped them. And then some of these other guys like Darius Miller has really been nice shooting the 3-ball for them, and he's been somewhat of a surprise.
Yeah, DeMarcus Cousins has been better than Anthony Davis all year. He's by a long shot to a degree. Cousins has been more consistent. Davis obviously has been in and out with injuries. I believe he had a concussion already this year too, or they thought he had a concussion.
Yeah, he got popped in the head one time really bad. I don't know if he got a concussion, but I know what you're talking about because he walked to the locker room with like a towel over his eye or something like that.
Yeah. Then he had the groin injury, obviously, that looked pretty painful. So he'll probably be out for at least a couple weeks. They've definitely surprised. And Rondo coming back, I really like Rondo on this team. I don't know why. It's not like he brings that much, but he had a double-double last night, which was good to see. Drew Holiday, for me, is the one guy I would like to step up. But anytime your roster has Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins, two of the best, if not the best big man in the league, I mean, your team should be in the top 15.
Yeah, I think one thing about Drew Holiday, and we kind of mentioned this in the preview pod, he was going to have the hardest adjustment because he was so used to having the ball in his hands, and now he has to go more to that catch and shoot role. Another thing that's really helped them is Jameer Nelson. That was a nice signing for them. Denver just let him go, and so that worked out perfectly. And if you want to read more Pelicans content, Evan Dial just dropped a great piece on the Pelicans. It's a 6-part piece, really goes in depth if you want to read some Pel stuff. But on to number 14, Corey's squad, the Indiana Pacers. They're up 9 spots from our preseason rankings, and I think even Kory would say he's surprised by their performance so far this season.
Yeah, I undersold them. I went into this year with 0 expectations, so I wouldn't be upset if they sucked. And they've been good. They've been fun to watch. This is the most I've enjoyed a Pacers team since the Pacers squad that went to the Eastern Conference Finals, lose LeBron James in Miami. They really have bought in Nate McMillan's system. They play tough. They play for each other. Victor Oladipo, as we know, is in the running for most improved player of the year. Miles Turner has been solid. Sabonis has been fantastic. There's a lot of guys who are just playing above their ceiling. It's similar to Detroit in a sense, where you have a lot of guys playing above their ceiling. And it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. It's just like a lot of team effort. Like every night it seems like somebody else is putting up 10, 20 points. Collison's been pretty good. Bogdanovich has had some nice moments. Thaddeus Young too. Like you mentioned, obviously Oladipo. Turner's finally starting to find his groove a bit. I mean, it's good for the Pacers, and some of these guys are like a good amount of them have chips on their shoulder. They're kind of somebody who's like forgotten about, not that good, and they're, like you said, playing a little bit over their ceiling right now. So it'll be interesting to see how much longer the Pacers can keep this up, or if they can keep it up the whole year.
Something funny that you'll get a laugh out of, because I was looking at stats for the Pacers. By the numbers, for at least 2 weeks, their best defender on the team was Bogdanovich.
That is ridiculous. I don't even understand how that's possible.
Yeah. He was playing their best team defense according to some statistics.
That is interesting, but I mean, from my eye test, I'll say Bogdanovich is not an ideal NBA defender. But hey, I think the Pacers as a squad play pretty good defense, and they seem to attack players and have each other's back when they play.
Yeah, their biggest issue is they let too many. They give up too many points in the paint. That's their biggest issue. Yeah,
it's like they have sometimes they over-rotate, which it happens. But on to number 15. This is a surprise in a negative way, and that's OKC. The Oklahoma City Thunder down 9 spots. Offense is pretty trash right now for the amount of talent they have. 21st in offensive rating with a team that has Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony.
I love that the Pacers are 1 spot above them this season. I mean, watching the Thunder, they're probably as of right now the second or third most team I watch on League Pass. It's confusing. Westbrook is to a degree deviating too much, and then late in the game he just goes back into tunnel vision Westbrook. That's never the way to run an offense, is to have somebody not be truly involved and then become overly involved. Paul George has been probably the best addition they've had. Paul George really hasn't been a problem for them. He's playing off the ball very well. Defensively, he's been extremely good. His only problem is the fact that he can have a game like he did against the Warriors and then go 1 for 12 the next night against the Mavericks or the next game. That's classic Paul George. Being a Pacer fan, Paul George has always played better in the bigger moments than the little moments. For whatever reason, he just doesn't bring the same energy. So that's been one issue. And then it's already starting. The Carmelo Anthony love on the Thunder is seemingly starting to dip, in at least the NBA Twitter community. I'm seeing a lot of people saying he's got to go to the bench. I mean, we'll see. He doesn't bring anything besides scoring. He's a sub-average rebounder. He moves the ball better than the stats say. But when you're not winning basketball, Carmelo just seems to be the national scapegoat.
Yeah, I think that could be an issue. And I think, and this is kind of throwing shade at both of us because on the award show we went with Billy Donovan. as the coach of the year, possibly. And he's kind of disappointed. I think the offensive and the lack of sets in the system and kind of having to find roles has hurt this team. It's almost like he's kind of left it to them to figure it out, but he kind of needs to just step up and be like, this is what we need to do. Russ needs to do this here. I think they need to make it more of a focus that Paul George is the number 2 option. Like he needs to be get more usage, more on ball for him and get him more touches. And Carmelo's more of that secondary third guy that you don't really worry about as much. And Westbrook and George are kind of the guys that push. And maybe obviously Melo's so offended about it, but it does help that Dwayne Wade's having success off the bench. Maybe they get Melo to come off the bench and he could really be an elite talent off the bench and give you plenty of scoring.
I mean, yeah. I mean, one of their biggest deficiencies is still that bench unit. Raymond Felton has been okay. Jeremy Grant has been okay. Abrinas isn't doing anything special this year. Roberson still can't shoot, even though I know he starts. And then, Patrick Patterson, we thought that was going to be a great signing.
He's been terrible.
Great deal. Oh, my God, he's horrendous. I know he had the knee surgery prior to the season, so he may just not be comfortable yet, but he's been horrible.
Yeah, I think that's probably been one of the major issues for them as well. They're probably expecting at least something from him, and maybe he's not healthy. That's the only thing I could think of. After looking at some of his stat lines, seeing him play minutes, and then he just consistently puts up 0 points. And there's plenty of spacing on the floor when you have a Westbrook and a Paul George and a Carmelo who are attracting 2 or 3 guys. So, I think a trade probably would help OKC. I don't know what asset they're looking to move, but if they could maybe get a solid scorer off the bench, just a role player. If not, maybe try Melo off the bench and trying to get him to agree to that.
Get Lou Will.
Oh, that's an interesting one. That would be imagine a lineup that would have Westbrook, Lou Will, Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, and then say you want to put out Grant or Adams, whoever you want. There would be so much offensive pop out there.
Yeah, and even just having a bench unit where Felton can have somebody who he can pass to and knows the guy can score.
Yeah.
That's the issue on the bench. I don't know if anyone on the bench unit really knows, there's no guy that, all right, you got to get me a bucket. And that's an issue for me when there's not a guy on the bench like that.
But, Billy Donovan should be staggering the minutes. With having 3 stars, he should be able to find a way to have one of these guys on the floor all the time, if not 2, and make it really work. But coaching is an issue, but it's early in the season, so there's still plenty of time for OKC to figure it out. I think come playoff time, this is still going to be a team that nobody really wants to face. Moving on to 16, Milwaukee Bucks. They are down 5 spots from our preseason rankings, but they're starting to gel right now. Eric Bledsoe's starting to find his groove with his team. What are your thoughts on the Bucks so far? And what are your thoughts of them at 16?
I think 16's maybe a little bit too low. They might be 1 or 2 spots higher. I think they're better than the Nuggets. But Antetokounmpo isn't playing as freakish as he did to start off the year, but he's still being, he's still almost unguardable when he goes to the hoop. The Bledsoe trade was a complete win. Bledsoe struggled offensively at first, but he was still doing everything that we know he can do on defense and moving the ball. Bledsoe was an absolute steal for Milwaukee. Brogdon has still been solid. Middleton is one of those guys who kind of annoys me. I feel like he's not as good as he should be. There's too many nights where he's going against a much smaller defender, and he just doesn't seem to have the same impact offensively, which is, to me, very frustrating for a guy who's as tall as he is, can't shoot over top of a guy like CJ McCollum. But, this is all with Jabari Parker still not in the lineup, and I'm really looking forward to him coming back in February. I'm not really concerned. I think this is all just, this isn't their year yet. A lot of people said this could be the Bucks' year to make the Eastern Conference Finals. It's not. But they definitely have a nice foundation to go forward.
Do you think they make a move for DeAndre Jordan? There's been a lot of talk about them possibly making the move, and I think the Clippers want either Malcolm Brogdon, Chris Middleton, or John Henson. They want 2 of those 3 players. Yeah,
no, I don't do it. If you have so much faith in Thon Maker, why are you gonna go get DeAndre Jordan? I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't give up Brogdon or Middleton for DeAndre. Giving the age difference, Middleton's still, I think, only 27. Brogdon, as we know, is in his sophomore year. Henson, if you wanted to move Henson, that'd be different. But there's no trade in which I want to give up one of the other 2 guys with Henson.
What about Henson and Jabari?
I definitely think about it because they definitely need presence down low, and Thonmaker just hasn't progressed yet to be that guy.
He's very raw. He's got plenty of time.
Yeah, but it also DeAndre's a free agent at the end of the year, so why are you going to give up? Why are you going to trade to get him to possibly just lose him? I don't know. I think DeAndre to Milwaukee is a long shot.
Personally, I worry about the spacing issue with Giannis and DeAndre. I think one issue for Giannis has been farther into the season, people have been really starting to back off of him, and having another player like DeAndre around could hurt that. I think maybe having a shooting big would help Giannis more than having a paint clogger. So moving on to number 17, Miami Heat, down 2 from our preseason rankings. I wasn't very high on the Heat going in. There's just a lot of inconsistency, and I knew they weren't going to play as well as they did at the end of last season. They weren't going to be as bad as they were at the beginning of last season, more so somewhere in between.
Yeah, I was wrong so far on Miami. You and Matt Chins were correct. Like we mentioned, when they went 31-11 to end the second half of last season, they were incredible. Deion Waiters was playing well above his career. Dragic was solid. Whiteside was solid. The role players were playing well. And so far this year, Dragic has been really inconsistent. Whiteside has struggled to stay on the court. Kelly Olynyk really hasn't found his fit yet in Miami. And then Deion Waiters remains to be a polarizing player. 1 week he's superstar confident Deion, and the next week I'm going to go 1 for 10 from the field Deion. There's just too much inconsistency for this team to be any higher than where they are.
Yeah, I think they need Whiteside to come back healthy and be that dominant force. He's the only guy on that team that could really be that all-star type player. Like you said, Goran Dragic has been inconsistent. They need just guys to step up. They do have some young pieces, so they can get better as the season progresses. But I think they'll be right around the middle of the pack all year long. Another team that made a big jump, and I hate to say this, the New York Knicks up 10 spots from the preseason rankings at number 18. Obviously, Kristaps has taken a giant jump. But guys like Enes Kanter, Courtney Lee, Tim Hardaway Jr. have also been solid.
Yeah, the Knicks have been probably the biggest surprise among crappy teams for a longer duration. I mean, I know Orlando had a really nice stint, but the Knicks were playing really good basketball for a solid 2 weeks after Tim Hardaway Jr. really struggled out of the gate. Porzingis has been great almost all season. And Courtney Lee has put up some really good numbers. It's a guy I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks are trying to trade somebody. He's a guy they could definitely trade. I know he's making like $42 million to $46 million, but with the way he's playing, I would definitely take Courtney Lee. He plays defense. He's been shooting very well. So that's been good to see. And then Kanter become like he's become like the face of the like the vocal leader of the Knicks somehow is Kanter.
Yeah. He's been an offensive juggernaut on the boards. I think he's one of the top players in the league in offensive rebounds. But one of our OTG writers, Michael Ryan, just wrote a great piece about the Knicks. And he mentioned, like you said, Courtney Lee, I think he makes around 10 or 11 for the next 2 or 3 seasons. So that's a tradable contract. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks do move him and try to pick up an asset because he's a perfect complementary player for one of these contending teams.
Yeah, I would definitely take a floater on Courtney Lee. It might take a first-round pick to get him if you're a contender, but I don't think it's out of the question of adding a guy like that. He's not even relatively that old.
Yeah, Lee has had a very interesting career. He's just been so inconsistent. 1 year he looks like a great player. 1 year he looks like a bad player. So it's really hard to get a gauge on him. But let's see what the Knicks do. I think I wouldn't be surprised if they maintain this level because Porzingis is just that great of a talent. But if he does continue to have injuries, I wouldn't be surprised if they fall a little bit more.
Yeah.
Number 19, Utah Jazz, down 5 spots, but they do have something to be happy about, and that's Donovan Mitchell.
Man, I tweeted about it that I thought Mitchell could be a steal in this draft. Absolutely, he was a steal. The guy is just a scoring machine. The 41 points he dished out the other night was fun to watch. He had a couple of really tough layups. He led the Jazz to that win. And the one bright thing about the Jazz is that now you have a rookie, getting all this confidence early while your best player is out. When Gobert comes back, Mitchell obviously slides into still the primary score, but you have Gobert down low. And I think it could really open up things for the Jazz, especially like you mentioned. The West is struggling right now. And a team like the Jazz, you're not out of it because everyone else is still struggling.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's such a great, advantage for the Jazz that actually Gobert is out and Mitchell's getting all these touches. So having him back and having a pick and roll partner for him, because Mitchell going to the season, people weren't sure if he could run the offense or handle any point guard duties, and he's done that a lot more. So he's already obviously surpassed what we thought he would do this year. I'm really interested to see if he can compete for Rookie of the Year, if someone's going to come for Ben Simmons or what's going to happen. Because right now, I mean, Mitchell's up there, Jason Tatum's up there, and there's still a lot of season left.
Yeah, I mean, if there's no Ben Simmons, then this is a two-man race between Mitchell and Tatum. I think Mitchell right now has the edge only because he's being more
featured.
Yeah, right. Yes, thank you. He's being more featured within the offense compared to Tatum, who's got a lot of veteran talent around him.
Yeah, like you could say Donovan Mitchell doesn't have anybody on his roster offensively compared to a Kyrie Irving or even an Al Horford. So I think that's a pretty big boost for Mitchell. But the Jazz, there's still a lot of issues there offensively. And I think, going through the year, we thought they'd be a little bit better. But I think this is probably more so where they'll be at because I think the question marks are there offensively.
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely gotten some nice, contributions from guys like Derek Favors, who last year saw the bench roll. And with Gobert being down, he's really had a nice run here. Rodney Hood has been up and down. Ingles, we've seen, has kind of struggled offensively since losing.
He's too passive. He's very passive. He's a great three-point shooter, but sometimes he's not aggressive scoring at all. It's interesting.
Yeah, and that's an issue. They've been without Joe Johnson for pretty much the entire year, and then Ricky Rubio still can't shoot, which is an issue.
Yeah, and having Rubio and Gobert on the floor is just going to be an issue. And then I saw somebody mention on Twitter is having Rubio, Gobert, and Favors on the floor is just terrible spacing. There's not really much you can do. So I think that's going to be an issue for the Jazz moving forward until they could figure out what to do with Rubio and make sure they have other shooters on the floor when he's out there. One guy who's also playing okay for them is Jonas Jerebko, just under the radar guy. But moving on to number 20, Charlotte Hornets, down 2 spots. Kemba Walker's banged up. Batum's missed mad time. The Hornets are kind of right what I expect from them.
Yeah, until they get healthy, this is what you should expect. I mean, Dwight Howard has been really good for them. A little bit under the radar. He looks better than he has in recent history with the Hornets so far. I like his role with them. Steve Clifford is definitely not bringing him back to his Orlando days, but definitely knows how to use Dwight. I've seen Dwight make a couple crossovers to go the drive to the hoop. I don't even know who Dwight Howard is at this point in time. But he's been solid. Kemba Walker, when he's healthy, has been really good. Jeremy Lamb has been a really nice surprise. He's really shouldered some of that offensive load with Batum missing time. And I think when Batum finally gets his elbow right, because, he's still kind of nursing it from the surgery, I think the Hornets can definitely make a run for, a 7 or an 8 seed in the East.
Yeah, I think the Hornets, they do. They need to get healthy, obviously, like you said. Kemba's a ton of fun to watch. Kyle Zawisk just wrote a great article about Dwight. Like you said, he's still producing, which is nice to see. He's definitely having a positive impact on the Hornets. So, I mean, this could be a team that could boost up for that 8 seed. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't, though, just because there's injuries and these guys have been hurt in the past. So we'll see what happens with the Hornets rest of the year. Number 21, Los Angeles Clippers, down 9 spots. You and I, we both were unsure about the Clippers going to the season. Injuries were a big problem.
Yeah, this was our nightmare on Elm Street come true. We worried about Gallinari. He's been a complete mess injury. They lost Pat Bev for the season. We feared a Blake Griffin injury. I don't think either one of us thought it would come in the fashion in which it did, by Austin Rivers being a clumsy son of a gun and falling on him. One of those freak things that happens. Unfortunately, this Blake Griffin injury possibly will cause the Clippers to reshape this entire franchise, whether that means Doc Rivers gets fired, whether that means DeAndre Jordan and or Lou Williams gets traded. There's nothing off the table now with that Blake Griffin injury.
Is Blake Griffin the next All-Star that goes in the trading block? I'm not saying it happens this season, but in terms of star players that we're going to see, obviously, every year we kind of have a star get mentioned, a lot of rumors. Is Blake the next guy? Obviously, if the Clippers trade DeAndre,
I think what it comes down to is, will he want to be a part of a rebuild?
and probably not.
If they decide to, right, if they decide to blow this up and they go, Blake, we're gonna, it's gonna take 2 to 3 years for a rebuild. Are you okay with that? He might say no. Let's get me out of here, and then that would be a complete, that would be a big loss for the Clippers because they go back to playing little brother to the Lakers.
Yeah, and the only thing that helps him is Blake seems to really like LA. Obviously, he's in a lot of TV shows, commercials. He has a relationship with Kendall Jenner. But what do you think the Clippers could get for Blake? Like, it would be a really hard trade because his contract is large, obviously, and he's injury prone. And I don't say that in a mean way, just as a fact now. So do they get good value for him, or are they just almost trying to get rid of the contract and hoping to get a little bit of assets back?
Honestly, if he comes back from this freak injury and plays really well and doesn't get hurt for the rest of the year, however likely or unlikely that is, then I think he definitely has trade value because I think people will at least look and say, okay, the last time he got hurt, it was a freak accident. He hasn't gotten hurt for this amount of time. I think that would be the only saving grace.
That he came back this year. And that'd be interesting. Blake could definitely be a guy I think that we could see on the move, especially if the Clippers go full rebuild. No, he's not at a point in his career where I think he can afford to take the time off, especially if he is healthy at that time.
Yeah.
So moving on from the Clippers, who probably might even drop, I'd hate to say this, but I think the Clippers could end up being one of the worst teams in the league by the end of the year.
They could definitely be in that bottom, 25 to 30 range.
Yeah, especially if DeAndre's gone, if Blake stays out for a long time. Gallinari, who knows when he'll be back, and even if he is, what is he going to do? So number 22, though, Orlando Magic. Interesting enough, they're up 5 spots from our preseason rankings, but right now they're sinking in the real NBA standings.
Yeah, they had a really nice start. They were a nice Cinderella story, Disney pun intended. They looked good to start. Aaron Gordon was playing really well. He still is. Evan Fournier, I had to screw his last name. He just isn't he's not hitting the long ball as consistently as he was to start off the year. And then there's, the point guard issue for me. Elfrid Payton came back, and when he came back, it kind of screwed up the chemistry a little bit. It feels like they're not just as offensively explosive as they were when they had DJ Augustine running the show. For whatever that is, why ever that's happening. Jonathan Simmons has still been solid. I know Terrence Ross is going to miss a lot of time now. He's out indefinitely after, I believe, a knee injury. So Orlando looks to be probably falling a little bit backwards, if not holding on to this 22 ranking.
Yeah, I think, I thought they would probably stay around a little bit higher, but it seems like their shooting just completely dropped off. And like you said, Elfrid Payton coming back, it might have hurt in their offense in terms of spacing. It's kind of made them less effective, and it's kind of closed down the floor a little bit, which has hurt them. So with the Magic, we didn't really expect playoffs. I thought maybe they could compete, but I think they're probably more likely to go closer to the bottom than to the playoffs.
Yeah, they had their week and a half where we had to at least say they're possibly going to make the playoffs because they were playing such good basketball. Unfortunately, Aaron Gordon decided he wasn't going to keep going 5 for 5 from 3.
Yeah. Interesting thing is, do you think Gordon could be moved? He's a restricted free agent at the end of the year. Is Orlando going to lock him up, or are they going to try to get value for him in a trade?
You're going to lock him up because I think even though they're struggling now, he's still been like the one piece you can say is definitely coming along. And I think after what you see happen with Tobias Harris and Victor Oladipo, this team can't afford to trade away another top prospect just to have him become good for somebody else.
Yeah, I think Gordon, you see enough in him that he can be impactful on a winning team. He could be your starter in the future. And it just seems like the Magic have been rebuilding for so long. So hopefully they can kind of find some groove. Next team, Los Angeles Lakers, down 1 spot from the preseason ranking. I mean, I thought the preseason ranking was already maybe a touch high. So I think they're probably playing better than I anticipated going to the season.
They're definitely playing better than I anticipated. For sure. I mean, this is definitely a bottom 20 to 30 team in the power rankings. I don't think they'll ever get above that 20 notch, at least for this year. But Lonzo Ball, who has been a scrutinized a lot. He fills up the stat sheet. He just isn't very aggressive or consistent offensively, which is his one issue. But Brandon Ingram has looked really good. He just needs a little bit more size and time. Kyle Kuzma has been probably the biggest surprise of the draft to a degree because of where he was taken.
And just a lack of hype on him. Like, Kuzma had no hype going to the draft. Like, Mitchell was starting to rise up draft board, so the hype's not really there. Kuzma was projected to be a second-round pick, and he came in late first, and he's looked like – we didn't mention him. We talked Rookie of the Year, but you could easily mention him as a candidate. He slowed down a little bit, but there's still a lot of talent there.
Yeah, I mean, it's caused the Lakers to have their own questions about the future because they have 3 power forwards who arguably all could be their starting power forward in the future. And now you kind of have to decide which guy they're going to let go. And at this point in time, it looks like Julius Randle is the odd man out. But, yeah, and that's all because Kyle Kuzma has played so well that you're going to probably get rid of Julius Randle.
Do you think Randle gets traded? Obviously, he's a free agent at the end of the year, so why wouldn't you trade him if you're not going to lock him up?
Yeah, I'd trade him, and I'd possibly even trade, Brook Lopez if I wanted to. Lopez and Randle, those 2 guys look like the ones that could be traded, and then Corey Brewer, not that he's a guy who's going to make any impact on any team, is another guy who could possibly be dealt.
Yeah, I could see Lopez being traded to maybe like a contending team as a bench scorer. Somebody to come in as like a 6-man like Cantor kind of was for OKC. Obviously, playing him a ton of minutes hurts because of his defensive ability, but Randle's an interesting guy. Like, he looks better than he was the previous season, so it's weird that the Lakers don't have any hype on him. I wonder if it's something off the court, but I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on a guy like Julius Randle. You pick him up on low value. If you like him, you keep him at the end of the year.
Well, I thought I saw something that was it was interesting that if maybe the Thunder don't win, they keep struggling. Maybe they try and trade Paul George to LA for Julius Randle, so they get some kind of young piece, and they don't lose Paul George for nothing.
Interesting, but I don't know. Like, it'd be tough unless they're doing really bad. Like, I still would want more value for Paul George.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like, I would be like, you got to throw something else in there too. So. But I wouldn't even mind if the Nets wanted to take a flyer on Julius Randle, to be honest. I think he's an interesting player.
If you're trying to add some young pieces, you can still do something with, a small ball lineup of Randle at center and then Rondae Hollis-Jefferson Jr. alongside of Crabbe or LeVert and D'Lo. I definitely wouldn't mind seeing that either.
Yeah, even if you want to use him as a bench, I think off the bench he's been nice for the Lakers too. So definitely someone I'll keep an eye on all year long. Number 24, Memphis Grizzlies, 7-spot drop from our preseason rankings. Obviously, we said on the preseason ranking, Conley goes down, Grizzlies go down, and that's what's happening right now. And Fizdale went down.
Things fizzled out him. It's been rough in Memphis. We both said it. Those 2 guys are what keep the Grizzlies grinding. And we've seen Gasol's numbers slightly dip since they lost. It's really hard to get your big man involved when you don't have a guy like Mike Conley. And that's kind of where Mike Conley's worth comes into a degree, is having a playmaking point guard like Conley really helps Gasol. Not that Mario Chalmers hasn't done a good job in Conley's absence, but, Mario Chalmers isn't going to get the most out of Marc Gasol like Mike Conley will, especially because Conley and Gasol have spent so much of their career together. There's a nice chemistry between the 2 of them. And I think that's been the biggest issue for them. Luckily, too, Tyreke Evans has been a freak. He put on another clinic last night, pretty much matching LeBron point for point, rebound for rebound, assist for assist. He's been really good for them. But again, you just can't do a lot in this league when you don't have a playmaking point guard or a guy who can really run the show. And that's what they're missing in Mike Conley.
Yeah, not only are they missing that, too, they're missing shooters. A lot of inconsistent shooters across the board, so they need to fix that. I think the roster, like we mentioned on the Fizdale firing episode, just the roster's not a great fit. A lot of pieces don't work. A lot of things don't match the current NBA, so they need changes there. But on to number 25, my Brooklyn Nets down 1 spot from the preseason rankings. And you know what? I'm not really too upset about this considering Jeremy Lin went down game 1. D'Angelo Russell went down. So it's not been too bad, and they're playing pretty hard considering the injuries they've dealt with.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they've had the amount of injuries they've had to start off this year, because I know you were really high on them, and I was really high on them too. And, to start off the year, D'Lo was playing like a guy who could have led the Nets to an 8 seed. The offense was really clicking, and now he's out indefinitely, so there's not really a timetable for his return. Crab has missed time, and Crab has had some up and downs. LeVert has looked good, and, it's just they're definitely right here at this ranking right now. But I got to be honest, if this team was healthy, they'd be a lot higher than this, I think.
Yeah, I really like the way D'Angelo is playing, and I mean, it sucks that even for Jeremy Lin going down game one, he's not, any standard an amazing player in this league, but he's still a starter. He's still a veteran. He's a guy that you could use. Luckily enough, Spencer Dinwiddie has really stepped up as the starting point guard right now. If they didn't have him, they'd be completely screwed, because Isaiah Whitehead has not been good. Sean Kilpatrick hasn't been good. Karis LeVert has been the backup point guard. So I think in some ways it sucks for the Nets, but they never were going to win a playoff series anyways, even if they were able to squeeze into an 8 seed. So I think the development for guys like Dinwiddie, LeVert getting the touches as a ball handler, I think will help the Nets in the long run.
I agree. I definitely think in the long run of things that this is okay. And actually, I look forward to possibly a lineup when D'Lo comes back, of D'Lo playing a 2-guard next to Dinwiddie. I don't know if you can move Dinwiddie back to the bench unit with how good he's been with that starting unit.
I wouldn't. I think Dinwiddie's, one of their best players so far this season, and he's not a selfish player at all, very unselfish. So I think him out there with D'Angelo would really help take the load off D'Angelo, because sometimes it seems like D'Angelo is just more comfortable being that scorer instead of having to worry about running the offense. He's a great passer still, but he doesn't always necessarily want to initiate the offense, and that's what Dinwiddie does so much better.
Yeah, and I think with having the offensive presence of D'Lo, it might even make things easier offensively for Dinwiddie.
Exactly. And shout out to DeMarre Carroll, who has been playing amazing for the Nets.
Yep. Carroll's been really good. And, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, he's been really good for them too.
Yeah, Rondae went from being a question mark in, is he ever going to be a starting caliber player, to really being one of the Nets' most consistent offensive guys, which is amazing. He actually has developed a post mid-range game in pretty much one offseason. So shout out to So number 26, another young squad, and their ranking has not changed since the preseason. That's the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, this is about fair. They could even be worse if you really wanted to be extra critical of them. Screw Greg Monroe, since he's been traded there, because for some reason they use him one night and don't use him the next night. It's really annoying.
Sucks for him, to be honest.
Yeah, especially a little FanDuel story. I had a night where I was like probably 40 or 50 points away from $1,000 because everybody went off, and I played Greg Monroe, and he didn't even play. Like, he didn't play a single minute, and I just don't get it. It really annoyed me. So now everyone knows.
That's the heartbreaker right there. That happened to me on one occasion, but I had Anthony Davis left. I was already high in the green. I'm like, all right, this is Gucci. I got Davis, one of the best players in the league. Like, I'm guaranteed a top 10 spot tonight. My man goes out in the first quarter.
It's funny how like the unpredictable seems to happen the most in FanDuel, which is why it's gambling, right?
Exactly. And then it's like FanDuel, like, not to get off topic, but say one night you play like 5 lineups and you got every angle covered, but all your guys do shit. Then the one night you play 2 lineups, and then you have that one guy in one of your lineups do bad, and you're like, any other night I probably would have won big.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Back to the Suns, though. Devin Booker has been the one guy who you don't have to worry about for the Phoenix.
And only 21 years old.
Yeah, I it's funny because, like, if you look at, like, the top young prospects, he's probably not even in the top 5. Or maybe he's, like, just top 5, like, barely in the top 5. But, man, they got a winner in him. The guy can score. Defensively, obviously, you're going to have to see how he develops when he's actually on a team that's good. Because I don't know how to gauge defense on a player when he's already surrounded by a team that plays no defense. It's really hard for me to judge him on that. But offensively, the guy puts up a ton of 30-point games already this year. I think he has 6. And then, really, TJ Warren has had a nice year too. But besides that, for Phoenix, you're a little bit less of a dumpster fire than the teams underneath you.
Yeah, they have some young talent. They're letting guys develop. Mike James has been impressive. Shout out to him. He retweeted one of OTG's tweets. But Devin Booker, like you said, he's almost like a forgotten young player because he plays in Phoenix and they're so bad. And you brought up another great point. I'm really interested to see how he plays when he's surrounded by other good players and on a good team. Where does he fit? Is he your second best player on a championship team? Is he your third best player? What type of role does he have? Because obviously playing on a bad team, you're going to get a ton of touches. But one thing's for sure, his jump shot is amazing.
Yeah, it's crisp. He's got a crisp one.
Too bad Marquise Chris doesn't have a crisp jump shot. But number 27, Sacramento Kings, down 2 spots. No surprise. I thought people were definitely way too overhyped about the Kings signing a few veterans, and they're trash.
Yeah, this was a possible playoff team, I remember, from whoever was on the preview pod with us with the Kings.
Oh, who was it? Oh.
I know. Somebody definitely said, whoever you are, you said this was a playoff team, and you might want to bury your head in the sand. Yeah, this has been interesting. Zach Randolph has been the only really good veteran signing they've had. He's, it's kind of tough to stop a guy who's a bulldozer. So he's been solid. George Hill, you're back to being on my shit list. I don't know what happened to you, dog. You went way down real quick. I understand the minutes are being, his minutes are kind of cut because they want to get De'Aaron Fox, time to progress. But George Hill has looked really bad. I don't know what happened to him. Offensively, he's nothing anymore. Vince Carter barely plays. The other Bogdanovich has some ice in his. He's had some ice in his veins. He helped defeat the Warriors, and they're probably their best win of the season so far. Willie Cauley-Stein is up and down, but in certain moments he looks like he can be like a type of DeAndre Jordan type of center. So there's a few nice pieces out there in Sacramento, but it's still basketball hell to me.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird they had all these veterans and they signed them not to play them and just like pay them all this money. And George Hill, he probably hates his life. He thought he probably would get his minutes cut a little bit, but some games it feels like he hardly plays at all. Like you said, Willie Cauley-Stein has definitely had some nice moments of being possibly an elite defensive player, but other than that, there's good, there's bad, and you're just hoping to develop some of these young guys.
There's good, there's bad, there's the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, there's just somewhere I don't know how to describe. But on to another bad team. This is a team that I kind of was cautious going into the season. I wasn't that high on them because I felt like they had a lot of question marks and they weren't very good the previous season. And that's the Dallas Mavericks, down 8 spots. Nerlens Noel doesn't even play, so I really don't know what's going on in Dallas. And Dirk is playing, and no offense to Dirk, he's an all-time great player, but he's looking really bad out there.
We mentioned this on the Full Access Hoops podcast a couple episodes ago. Dirk just looks like every time he's moving, he's in pain. His movement, he's always been an awkward guy, but his awkward movement now just looks like painful. It doesn't look like he's comfortable on the court. He still has moments where he still looks a little bit vintage. I know he did it against the Brooklyn Nets, at least early on in the game. But they're a mess out there. Harrison Barnes has been solid. Dennis Smith Jr. has had glimpses that he could be their future point guard. Wesley Matthews offensively, that guy is so inconsistent. I don't know what really happened.
He's never been the same after the Achilles injury.
No,
which happens to a lot of players.
Right, you're right. He definitely hasn't. Losing Seth Curry out to start off the year really hurt them as well. And from what I've read about Nerlens Noel, apparently the guy's just lazy. Apparently,
they said work ethic is terrible.
Yeah, he doesn't put in the work. So, and with a guy like Rick Carlisle, that's not gonna fly. If you're not putting in the effort, he ain't gonna play you. He's one of those old school coaches where you have to earn a spot to play on this team.
Yeah, and honestly, if rumors keep coming out like that, Noel's just gonna hurt his value so much in the offseason. Obviously, we already know he's probably not coming back to Dallas, so maybe he's moved, at some point this year. But nobody really wants a player that has a bad work ethic and is going to bring that around the organization. So, but in terms of Dallas overall, Dennis Smith Jr., I think hasn't been as great as people expected going into the season. I also think there's a huge question mark about young talent on the Mavericks. Where do the Mavericks go? They have Harrison Barnes and Dennis Smith Jr. There's not really a ton of other young guys that you can hope to build around.
Yeah, even Yogi hasn't really played that well in his sophomore year. The offense in Dallas is just their biggest issue. They don't have enough scoring.
Yeah, And I mean, it's just not like they just don't have a ton of great players. You know, if this was prime Dirk with this team would be pretty good, but it's not. And that's probably what they would need to kind of save it. The big position is really confusing because they could really use Nerlens Noel, so it kind of even sucks more than, it already does.
Yeah, I saw rumors too about them possibly going after DeAndre,
That
but
that
I
is
don't know.
funny.
I feel
That
like
is
that's
so.
kind of a long shot.
What are they gonna do? Go to trade him and then back out the last second?
I don't know if Mark Cuban would like. I don't think he's truly forgave him either. That didn't seem
I
like a Mark
wouldn't.
Cuban thing.
And you're gonna have to re him up at some point. Do you trust this guy? No, I would never. That
No.
would be just so stupid. Like after he played you so bad. Like if anything, like maybe the Mavericks are just trying to hurt his trade value, like offering second round picks or something.
Yeah, possibly.
Corey's second favorite team in the league, the Atlanta Hawks at number 29. I got to give the Hawks credit though. They beat the Nets yesterday. They play hard. If you don't come out with energy, they're going to beat you. But if you play, relatively good, you're going to beat the Hawks.
Yeah, 5-17. So I predicted. I can't remember how many wins. I think it was 16, 19, something. It was under 20. So I still feel pretty good about that at this quarter mark in the season.
And they just lost some guys for some time. Dwayne Dedmon went out for some time. Yep. John Collins is going to miss a few weeks. Collins has been a really nice bright spot, though.
Yeah, Collins is a dunking machine. That guy just throws down the hammer. Those kind of big men will always fit well with Dennis Schroeder. He's really good at using his big men. There's a reason that Paul Millsap and Al Horford both really liked playing with Dennis Schroeder. He's a really good pass-first point guard, and offensively this year, with more on his shoulders, he's really played well. Minus the ankle injury he suffered, which forced him out of several games, which really helped my 19-win cause. The Hawks are just that team. Like they're going to be in the bottom of the bottom of the East. They're going to get some scrappy wins when teams kind of take them for granted, like the Cavs did earlier. But they're not going to be above this 27 mark.
They kind of remind me of last year's Nets in a way. Like obviously they run similar systems. Atkinson coming from Atlanta, and I think they're a team that just like they're not going to just roll over and give you an easy win. They've been in a lot of games, and considering their talent level, it's impressive from Budenholzer to get them to play this hard.
I agree. It definitely speaks on what kind of coach Budenholzer is. Coming into this year, you knew this was going to be a rebuilding session, and he's really shown that he is a coach who can get the most out of his players.
Yeah, I agree. But just to mention, I don't know if I said this, the Hawks didn't move at all. They're at number 29. On to 30, which I think we said last week, worst team in the league, and I'm going to go with that still, the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, it's a toss-up for me between Chicago and Atlanta, but if you go
Dallas is pretty bad too. Dallas is pretty bad too.
But if you go by the worst net rating of any team, it's the Chicago Bulls at -12. This is a dumpster fire. Robin Lopez, I'm sure he would like to get out of there because he's got some value, I feel like, as a defensive center.
Save Robin.
Save one of the Lopez brothers from being on a bottom 5 team. But, Denzel Valentine has some nice minutes. Justin Holiday, I don't know why you picked Chicago because that kid is actually a very good basketball player.
I was high. I've been high on him. I don't know why the Knicks didn't re-sign him, and I was surprised that Chicago got him on the cheap too.
Yeah, he's
and
played
they signed
really
him quick,
good.
Which is funny. Yeah, I like him.
He's been solid, and to that credit, even though the Jimmy Butler trade, you're not going to get great, absolute great value giving away Jimmy Butler. But Chris Dunn, in the moments he's had, like I know he's had a couple blunder passes. I think you posted one where he went to throw a pass and he hit the rim, which is laughable. But besides certain things like that, he's had a decent stretch when he's on the floor for them. So I mean, he could be a part of that future, especially because he's such a defensive antagonist. So there's some nice pieces out, and Lauri Markkanen, I can't go without mentioning him. I thought he was going to be underrated coming into the draft, and he has been, a solid 16-8 guy so far his rookie year.
Yeah, Markkanen has definitely impressed me. I didn't expect him to do it this quick. He's kind of benefited from that Bobby Portis, Nikola Mirotic brawl. I don't know if I'd even call it that. Like you said, Valentine's they've had a lot of their young guys show flashes. So they knew they'd be bad, but at least they have young players to play. and see them get better. And they'll have a better idea at the end of the season. You know, is this a guy we can build with, or is this a guy we're going to have to get rid of and find another piece? And obviously, still Zach LaVine will probably come back at some point this season. I think he's dunking already.
Yeah,
he's
I'm pretty sure he's in contact practice or he's running drills.
Yeah, so we should probably see him 2018 at least.
Yeah, I think they're eyeing a New Year's type of comeback.
Yeah. All right, so that wraps up 1 through 30. Out of all these teams, any one of them really piss you off where they're ranking that, or everybody's pretty reasonable?
Does anyone piss me off? The only ranking that annoys me more than others, I guess, would be Denver at 11. Denver at 11 is the only one that really annoys me. I just don't think they're that good. I wouldn't even take them over the Pelicans, Pacers, or even the struggling Thunder to a degree.
Yeah, I could see Denver, especially with the injuries. So, but for me, I think maybe there's not really any that really truly stick out that are terrible. Obviously, the guys and girls put them in earlier this week, so not a ton of bad stuff. So we'll keep an eye on it as the season progresses. I think the most interesting thing was seeing all the changes from the preseason. What teams are so much better? What teams are so much worse than what we anticipated? I mean, for me personally, surprise-wise, I would say the Knicks are really a huge surprise for me. And I would say Detroit to an extent, because this is kind of what we expected from Detroit last year, and then they finally decided to kind of put it together this year. It's strange.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to give you my top 3 surprises, it would probably be the Pistons,
and Pacers
and Knicks. Those 3 for me are yes, granted, if you look at the power rankings, those 3 have the biggest jumps in the rankings. But those 3 to me have been the biggest surprises, only because I expected Detroit. I expected Detroit, Indiana, and New York to all be on the outside looking into the playoffs. And right now, 2 of those 3 are in the playoffs.
Yeah, and there's a good chance 2 of those 3 will make the playoffs. It's a possibility. And I think Detroit right now would be a team we're willing to almost lock in as a playoff team. And going into the year, I had them as, a fringe type team. So negative surprises, what's the biggest negative surprise you think from here? Or not really any, because a lot of them are based off of injuries.
Yeah, the biggest negative surprise would have to be like the Clippers or something, or the Grizzlies. But we had both mentioned before the season started that if they had injuries, this is where they would be. So I don't know how much of a surprise that is.
Yeah, I think,
especially when it's the guys who are always hurt. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we were surprised that Gallinari got hurt. That's the guy who always gets hurt.
Exactly. Yeah, OKC may be struggling so hard as a surprise, but I did expect them to struggle a bit, just not quite this much. But that wraps it up for today. Our power rankings, if you want to see the full list, is on otgbasketball.com. And as always, you can listen to the NBA Outlet on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, and YouTube. Kory, thank you for hopping on as always. And everybody, thank you for listening.
Adios.